My mill asked about my parents' inheritance. I said, none. Then I took action that shocked everyone. Welcome back with a new real shock story. Before we start, comment and tell me which city you're watching from. At the end, don't forget to subscribe and rate it from 0 to 10. Let's enjoy the story, everyone.
I still remember the exact moment my life quietly began to change, though I didn't realize it at the time. It was just another ordinary evening. I had finished work, walked through the front door, and was greeted by the warm hum of our home, the smell of tea brewing in the kitchen, my children's laughter in the other room, the faint sound of rain tapping against the windows. Everything felt safe, normal. I smiled, dropped my bag, and sat at the kitchen table. Little did I know, what was about to unfold would make me question everything I thought I knew about my life, my marriage, and even myself. For years, my life had been simple but full. I was a wife, a mother, a daughter. I knew my role in the family and, honestly, I loved it. I enjoyed caring for our home, making sure everything ran smoothly, keeping my family fed, safe, and happy. My husband, Michael, worked hard. My in-laws, though older, were warm and gentle, always visiting with smiles and teacups full of stories. Life was a pattern I thought I understood, but there were little things, tiny moments I began to notice that I didn't quite understand. I brushed them off until they became too hard to ignore. It started with small things. An extra repair done around the house that I never asked for. Bills showing up paid sooner than expected. Grocery deliveries that I never ordered but appeared on the doorstep. At first, I thought maybe Michael was just being thoughtful. I told myself it was nothing. But over time, it began to feel strange. Then, there were the quiet conversations just outside my hearing range, between Michael and my mother, and they'd speak in hushed tones when they thought I wasn't listening. Laughter that sounded a little forced, glances that lingered too long. I never thought much of it, because why would I? Families have their own ways of talking, right? One evening, as I was clearing the table after dinner, I overheard something that changed everything. My mother-in-law was on the phone, speaking softly. "You've been doing so much, for so long." Without her knowing, her voice was low, almost guilty. My heart skipped. I froze in place, barely breathing. Could I have been missing something this whole time? I wanted to ask Michael, but something stopped me. Maybe it was fear, maybe it was denial. I told myself it was nothing important, but deep down, a quiet tension began to grow. Days passed, and my unease only grew heavier. Michael started staying late at work more often, taking phone calls in private, disappearing for hours without explanation. The little cracks in our normal life widened. I began noticing patterns: quiet payments, mysterious packages, long silences. I tried asking, but he brushed it off. One afternoon, I was alone at home when my phone rang. The voice on the other end was calm but hesitant. "It's about your family, and what you don't know." The words stuck in my mind. My stomach tightened. I didn't know what they meant, but something deep inside told me I was about to find out. Then it would change everything. That night, I lay awake, replaying everything in my mind. Every smile, every moment of peace, suddenly felt like it could be a question, rather than an answer. And the question that haunted me the most was, what truth have I been living without knowing? That was when my ordinary life began to slip quietly into something far more complicated. Something that would take 15 years to fully uncover. It wasn't long after that sleepless night that things began to unravel. I tried to convince myself I was imagining things, that I was reading too much into small details, but every day, the whispers of doubt grew louder. The quiet tension in our home became harder to ignore. I couldn't explain why, but a feeling had taken root deep inside me, a feeling that something important was being kept from me, something I deserved to know. It was early one rainy afternoon, when the truth started to slip through the cracks. I had been cleaning upstairs when I heard voices below. Michael was talking quietly with my mother-in-law again. Normally, I wouldn't eavesdrop, but this time, my curiosity was too strong. I crept to the top of the stairs and listened. "It's been easier this way," she said softly. "She doesn't need to know. She wouldn't understand." Michael's voice was strained. "But 15 years, Linda, it's a lot. She deserves to know eventually." 15 years, that word struck me like a blow. 15 years of something hidden. My heart pounded in my chest. I felt frozen in place. My breath caught somewhere in my throat. I needed answers. I needed to know what they were hiding. But when I confronted Michael later that night, he wouldn't answer me directly. He said only, "Alec, it's complicated. You don't understand." That silence between us became heavier than any argument. I felt myself retreating, confused and hurt. Days turned into weeks. I found myself noticing everything with new eyes. The way Michael's hand lingered on bills, the way my mother-in-law would glance toward me before speaking, the extra care that went into the house without explanation. I started going through old documents quietly, searching for any clue, but I found nothing concrete, only shadows and questions. Then one evening, it happened. I was cleaning the attic and found a box tucked away beneath old blankets. It wasn't locked, but the sight of it made my chest tighten. Inside were receipts, bank statements, and papers, everything from the last 15 years. They showed payments I had never known about. Bills for our home, repairs, family expenses, all paid quietly by Michael without my knowledge. I sat there trembling, the papers in my lap. 15 years, every single month, quietly paid, every sacrifice hidden away. I wanted to cry. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't even breathe. It was only then I understood. My life had been built on a secret my husband had carried alone for 15 years, and for all those years, I had lived completely unaware. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, trying to process it all. My thoughts were racing. Why didn't he tell me? Was it love, pride, shame, or was it something else entirely? I knew I had to find out, but I also knew this truth would change everything. The next morning, I didn't wake up the same person I was the night before. A quiet storm had settled inside me. I was no longer just living my life. I was now searching for answers to something that had been kept from me far too long. And I had no idea where this journey would lead. From that morning on, I couldn't stop thinking about what I had found. 15 years of hidden sacrifices, payments, bills, care, all quietly taken on without me knowing, wasn't just a secret. It was a lifetime of choices I had never been part of. Every smile, every quiet evening, every moment of peace suddenly felt like it had been built on something I hadn't understood. I kept going about my days as if nothing had changed. But inside, I was unraveling. I would wake up and watch Michael across the kitchen table, his coffee untouched, eyes distant. I wondered if he thought I knew. I wondered if he was waiting for me to ask again. But every time I tried, my words stuck in my throat. It wasn't just pride that made him silent, it was something deeper, heavier. Over the next few weeks, I began quietly investigating. I'd check old accounts, reread statements, and piece together patterns. The truth was worse than I expected. Every payment, every repair, every small act of care for my in-laws had been covered by Michael alone, and not just in small amounts. These were big sacrifices, ones that quietly shaped the life we lived. 15 years of invisible giving. The more I uncovered, the heavier my chest became. I started to realize this wasn't just about money. This was about trust, about respect, about honesty in a relationship. I couldn't help but wonder, why had he done this without telling me? Was it to protect me, or was it to keep me in the dark? One afternoon, I followed him, not in some dramatic way, just quietly. I wanted to see for myself. I found him in the old part of town, standing outside a small apartment building. Inside, an older couple, my in-laws, were waiting, smiling, as he handed them envelopes and keys without saying much. I watched, heart pounding, as he left without a word. When I confronted him later, he didn't argue. He just looked away, his shoulders heavy. "Alec," he said quietly, "I've been protecting you, protecting us." But what he said only made me angrier, because protection without honesty felt like betrayal, and I needed to know why he had carried this alone for so long. That night, I lay awake again. My mind replayed everything I had learned, the hidden bills, the quiet meetings, the years of secrecy. I could still see my mother-in-law's face in my mind, hear her hushed words. 15 years of my life had been shaped by something I didn't know about, and it was breaking me. The next morning, I found a letter in my bag. It wasn't addressed to me. It was in Michael's handwriting. Inside he wrote, "Some truths are heavier than words. I hoped to carry this without you feeling the weight. But now, you must know." That was the moment I realized this was no longer just about a secret. It was about something far deeper. Something about trust, love, sacrifice, and what happens when they collide. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. My heart was pounding, my thoughts spinning. I knew this story wasn't going to end quietly. Something bigger was coming, something I wasn't ready for. But I couldn't stop. And that's when I understood. I was standing at the edge of a truth. that would change everything about my life. The days after I found that letter were unbearable. Every moment felt heavier, like I was walking underwater. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't stop thinking about Michael's words. Some truths are heavier than words. I kept turning them over in my head. What truth was so heavy that he would carry it for 15 years without telling me? Finally, I decided I couldn't wait any longer. I needed answers. That evening, I followed him again, though this time my heart was pounding so hard I thought it would burst. He drove to a place I'd never been before, small, run-down house at the edge of town, the kind of place you pass by without thinking twice. Inside, I saw them, my in-laws, sitting quietly, speaking softly with Michael. He was handing them envelopes, papers, things I couldn't see clearly, but the look on their faces, it was a mixture of relief and sadness. I felt my stomach tighten. This wasn't just about money anymore. I stepped closer, and that's when Michael saw me. His face froze. For a moment, the world seemed to stop. My mother-in-law looked up, her eyes widening in shock. They didn't say a word. The silence was suffocating. Michael came to me later, pulling me aside. "Alec, I need you to understand," he said, his voice trembling. "I've been doing this to protect you, to protect us all. You wouldn't have been able to handle it." But I could barely breathe. "Handle what?" I asked, my voice shaking. "Why didn't you tell me?" He looked away, closing his eyes as if carrying some unbearable weight. "Because I thought I was sparing you. 15 years, Alec. 15 years I've kept this secret so you wouldn't have to live with it. But now, it's all unraveling." The room seemed to close in around me. I could feel every second stretching, every heartbeat loud in my ears. 15 years, a lifetime of hidden truth. My trust shattered, my world tilted on its axis. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in the dark, replaying every memory, every quiet moment, every unspoken word between us, and I realized something terrifying. I didn't just want answers anymore. I needed them. I needed to know why he had done this, what he had been protecting me from, and whether the man I married was still the same man I knew. When I confronted him again, he finally broke. His voice cracked. "Alec, there are things you can't unlearn, things that would destroy you if you knew them now, but I promise everything I've done was to keep you safe." Those words hung in the air, heavier than any silence. I wanted to scream, to cry, to walk away, but instead, I stayed, because deep down, I knew this story wasn't over. It was just beginning, and whatever came next, I knew it would change me forever. I woke the next morning with a heaviness in my chest I couldn't shake. It felt like my heart was carrying its own weight, like every beat was pulling me deeper into something I couldn't escape. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about Michael's words. Things you can't unlearn. I kept turning them over in my mind. What was the truth he had been protecting me from all this time? And why hadn't he trusted me to handle it? The day was heavy with silence. Michael barely spoke to me. We moved through the house like shadows of ourselves. I found myself watching him, watching the way his shoulders sagged, the way he avoided my gaze. It was like we were both carrying a wound too deep to heal. That afternoon, I decided I couldn't just stand in silence anymore. I had to know everything. I went back to the small house he visited, standing outside, trembling. My in-laws were there. They didn't look at me, but I could feel their eyes on me, watching, judging, maybe even pitying. I stepped inside, and the air felt thick with years of unspoken pain. Michael stepped in behind me, his expression unreadable. "Alec, this is it," he said softly. "Everything you need to know." He began telling the story, the sacrifices, the debts, the struggles they had quietly endured. I listened, feeling my emotions swirl between heartbreak, disbelief, and anger. 15 years of hidden truths, carried alone by him, had shaped every choice, every moment of our lives. It wasn't just about money. It was about pride, about protection, about the fear that telling me the truth would destroy the fragile balance of our world. But hearing it now, it didn't feel protective. It felt like a barrier built between us, a wall of silence that had kept me away from understanding everything. When he stopped speaking, there was silence. Deep, heavy silence. I didn't know what to say. I felt my hands shake, my breath catch in my throat. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. But instead, I just stood there, staring at the man I thought I knew. Finally, I whispered, "Why didn't you trust me?" He looked at me, eyes wet. "Because some truths are too heavy to share," he said quietly. I walked away then, but my mind was already replaying every moment of our life together. The laughter, the quiet nights, The little sacrifices, I wondered how much of it was real, and how much was built on a truth I had only just discovered. That night, I lay awake again, thinking about trust, love, and the cost of silence. 15 years had passed without me knowing. 15 years of my life shaped by a hidden truth, and now it was out. The question was, what would I do with it? I realized then that this wasn't just my story. This was the story of so many stories of hidden sacrifices, unspoken truths, and the weight of silence. Stories that demand to be told. And the real question lingers, how many more lives carry secrets like mine, and how long before the world learns the truth? Because some truths aren't just heavy, they change everything.